In this week's brand new episode of Hill Climb Monsters in Project Cars 2, the legendary BMW M1 Procar takes on our Azure Coast Hill Climb course. Can this straight six savage take top spot? Let's find out. What's going on, guys? My name is Batilio and welcome back to Project Cars 2 and a brand new episode of Hill Climb Monsters. And this week, as you can see, the car we have chosen, or I have chosen should I say, is the epic BMW M1 Procar. And there's a couple of reasons why I chose this. The first one being we haven't done a BMW yet and they've got such a great history in motorsport that it's a shame that we haven't done one, but we're going to rectify that this time around for this week's episode. And the other reason is it's got a pretty storied history with regards to it, and a pretty interesting one. It was obviously produced from 78 to 81, and in 79, the head of BMW Motorsport at the time devised a one-make series called the Procar BMW M1 Championship. And they did this championship in order to kind of satisfy the regulations in order to enter the Group 4 category of the World Sports Car Championship. The series itself ran for 2 seasons. It acted as a support race for Formula 1 and had a lot of current and former Formula 1 drivers competing in it. And in the 2 seasons that it ran, the first season was won by Niki Lauda, who would eventually go on to become a 3-time world champion. At the time of winning it in 79, he was a 2-time champion. And the other, in 1980, was won by Nelson Piquet, who would go on to win 3 world championships during the course of the 1980s. Looking at the stats for the car itself, pretty impressive considering this car is nearly 40 years old. It's got a 3.5 litre straight 6 engine, which is producing nearly 500 brake horsepower, coming out of 485 there, which is good enough to send this thing to 207 miles an hour and 0 to 60 time of 4.3 seconds, which again, even though it's a race car, but given it's 40 years old, that's pretty impressive times. It's got a 5-speed H-pattern shifter. Doesn't have any traction control, stability control, ABS, none of that stuff, and it weighs 2,248 pounds. So it's not the lightest car we've had, but it's by no means the heaviest either. And yeah, I mean, also I think it just looks absolutely amazing. I love the look of this thing. It really does. Maybe just a little bit dated, but again, at the same time, I think this is one of the best looking BMWs ever produced, in my opinion. That's just me, but I love the look of this thing. So yeah, in terms of the run, the setup and so on, pretty straightforward. I had to wind down the steering ratio a bit and dial back the brake pressure and twiddle around with the bias and so on and so forth. But honestly, this car was quite planted from the start. You know, the front end is very pointy. The rear end is so stable. To me, the rear end felt a lot like the Ferrari F50 GT from a few weeks back in how planted the rear end was. Because a lot of the cars, because there's a lot of undulation, there's a lot of bumps, and you're breaking traction a lot, you do have to somewhat be hesitant on the power through certain sections, because obviously you're going to unsettle the rear end. But this thing was having none of it. It was just so planted. If I tried to get this thing out of shape, I'd probably fail, because it's just so good at the rear of the car. The 2 drawbacks for it after getting the car set up was, through the higher speed corners, there is a slight hint of understeer, just a little bit. Coming down the Great Ocean Highway towards the viaduct straight, there was a little bit of a hint of understeer there. And also, the other thing that kind of struck me about this car was it's oddly fragile. The first few times I was doing runs with it just to try and get an idea of how I was going to take the run itself, I was taking the bump on at the Magic Roundabout, that big abrupt bump that some cars can take them, some cars can't. This is one of the cars that can't. So it's yeah, like I said, it's oddly fragile. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting this thing to be a little bit tougher. So I had to obviously adjust the way I was taking that particular section. But apart from that, this is one of the more straightforward cars I think I've ever had to set up and do. It's so good. Like I said, the rear end's planted. I'm able to get the power down very, very quickly and not have to worry about maybe getting out of it and counter steering to get the thing to settle down again. It's just so planted. In the front end, again, obviously very good. There is a hint of understeer, like I said, through some of the higher speed stuff, but nothing that can't be handled. Someone with a better idea of how to set the car up than me. I'm getting better at it, admittedly. I would think I'm getting better at setting the car up, but someone who's better at it than me could probably maybe get rid of that understeer completely. Looking at the leaderboards in terms of the times here, as you can see, the Jaguar XJR9 LM still sits top of the table. My nephew who picked that car, so that's still top of the table. I don't think the BMW M1 is going to be able to get to that sort of time, But, I mean, in terms of the cars around it from the same sort of era, the 84 Renault 5, but that's a Group P car, so I think it's going to handsomely beat that. And I think the 77 Porsche 935, I don't think it's got any chance of beating that, because that Porsche 935 is just so fast. The Lamborghini Diablo maybe should be shooting for 6th place. 717. I think this would maybe come out with anything between a 7:20 and a 7:15. I think that'll be a respectable time for it. But yeah, anyway, we'll see what happens. What we're going to do now, though, is we are going to jump over and we are going to take a look and see how the BMW M1 Procar got on its run through our Azure Coast hill climb. Okay, then, guys, so here we go. What was pretty much the final chance of the hour itself. And we're going to see here just how pointy it is. Actually catches me out a little bit. We're going to get a bit of curb on the inside there. Doesn't lose us too much time. And it gets itself settled right down again. As we come through the centre S's as well, you just see how good the line is through here. A lot of cars you can be caught chasing it, but nothing of the sort with this thing. And again, a little bit of those just small locks on the brakes, makes it a little bit hairy through there. But coming into Trash Code corner, you're going to see how quick we get the power on. And there's no hesitation at all. That's how good the rear of this car is. As soon as you're through the corner and you want to get on the power, just get on it. You don't have to hesitate or anything like that. The rear is just going to stay absolutely planted. But as we come through the magic roundabout, threading the needle a little bit, as we said, we can't take the bump on the inside there because it will break the suspension, and that will pretty much end any run you've got going if you've been doing, whether it's good or bad. But coming into stickman squats, don't quite get the apex there, but it's not a massive issue because you don't really have to take the apex. There's quite a pronounced bump on the inside which can unsettle the car, so maybe staying off the apex through there, it does give you a bit more of an advantage and maybe save you some time and actually save the run, as I've noticed from a few previous cars as well. But onto the happy highway, chance to get a breather. Another area where this car excels is coming over this bump here. We're not having to lift at all, not a hint of it. Some cars we've seen we have to lift, otherwise it's just, you know, you're heading to the moon. With this, nothing of the sort. And again, just a little ease off and maybe a dab of the brakes through traffic cone corner there. As we said, it's a bit understeery through some of the higher speed stuff, so you know, it's not a massive issue. I don't think we're losing that much time in comparison to other cars, because it's still very pointy, but it's just something to be watching out for if you are going to take this run yourself. But coming through Stonewall corner again, no real drama. We do get on the grass a little bit, just causes us to maybe just get out of the power just a little bit too early, but I don't think it's going to cost us too much time. And through understeer, well, not a hint of it. I'm going to have to change the name of that corner because I haven't seen cars understeer through there in a while. But coming into Ice Cream Cove now, this is the only area where I didn't get it. If you get the entrance at the first part wrong, then you're maybe going to be a little bit out of sync. And but again, it's not really a massive drama. Coming through onto Cobra Pass, and this thing is so good. Again, a lot of the cars, like I said, with these rapid changes of direction back and forth, these S-bends, you can find yourself chasing the car if you try and take it a bit too quickly. But with this, it just kept pace with how I wanted to take it, which was absolutely brilliant. But coming down to James May corner again, we're not going to take the apex because there's quite a big bump there, but the problem is the exit normally because it is quite bumpy. But again, nothing of the sort from this thing. The rear is just absolutely, it's like it's glued. It's like it's on rails. It really is. It's so good. And I know we're at the end of the first sector now, and I'm kind of running out of good things to say about this car because it is so good. But coming into Silver Spoon, we do get a little bit out of shape through there, and we don't quite get the entry as we wanted. But coming down to a newly named corner now, someone made a request, but Danger Curve there with the bump on the inside. That is what it will be named from now on, so thank you for that. But coming on to Outrun, again, this is one of those cars which, you know, one of the few cars where I can say pretty much planted through there. A lot of cars you do have to ease off because you can find yourself in that barrier on the left if you're not careful. But with this, pretty much flat out again, no drama. We've got two wheels off on the grass into the braking zone, but not a hint that it was going to throw us off and spit us off into a barrier or a wall. Absolutely solid as a rock. And that's the thing about this car. With a lot of cars I've mentioned, it's like I say, well, it's really good through Sector 1, it's really good through Sector 3, but Sector 2, you've got to be a little bit wary here and there. You have to tippy-toe through the Monger-McRae Hill Complex or whatever. This takes everything in its stride. You know, this is... I don't know. People talk about spirit animals. This is my spirit car because it's just so in tune with how I like to drive it. I want a planted rear end, I want a pointed front end. This thing has both of those things, and it is so good. And speaking of coming through the Monger-McRae Hill Complex, as we mentioned, because this car doesn't have to ease off when it comes to those bumps and jumps, it's going to pick up a lot of time. Maybe not, you know, with this bump here, let's say, you maybe lose a fraction of time for another car if you're having to get out of the throttle a little bit, but when you add it all up, it could be 1 or 2 seconds. With this thing not having to do that, it's going to gain it so much time at the end of the run. And like I said, there's just absolutely no drama at all over these bumps. Very planted, and you know, maybe get a little bit nose happy there. But again, even when you maybe just get a little bit too deep into a braking zone or a jump, it's forgiving. You can bring it back again. You're not struggling. You're not like thinking, oh God, here we go. This is going to hurt. I'm going to hit a wall. It is a forgiving car. And it's brilliant. I think it's one of my favourite Hill Climb Monsters cars. A lot of the other cars, you know, they're rewarding because they're hard cars to drive, and you've got to really put effort into it. But with this, I don't know. It just, like I said, with the setup of the car, there wasn't really that much to do. And with the driving of the car, again, I'm not really having to put much effort into it. The only jump it sort of maybe, I suppose you could say, struggle with is this one coming up here, where you can see with the landing, maybe just gets a little bit more on the left front quarter there, but. Coming on to the Great Ocean Highway, this here, just so quick through there, it finds the line so quickly, and you're away. A lot of other cars, you have to kind of, you know, be very hesitant through there, but with this, nothing of the sort. And again, coming through this curve and down towards the tunnel, just so good, so brilliant. It's just, I've run out of good things to say about it. I don't know. I mean, I haven't really. I'm going to have a look for interviews to see what the drivers actually said about the M1 Procar when they were driving it in the championship. Guys like Lauda and PK, but I can only imagine they enjoyed it as much as I did driving this thing, because it is so good. It really is. Even coming up now to, as we're about to see, the corners like Deception, there was no bother. You're going to see I maybe get a little bit too deep into there. I do have to just add a bit of extra turn, but again, it just holds it. It's so good. And through sweeps, the initial part of sweeps, I knew this car would be very good, but I think where it properly excels is the back end, because there's not a lot of cars that I've had on Hill Climb Monsters which are very good at just rapid changes of direction. This thing is, as we see through the S section, you can just pick a line, and again, even if you are able to go left to right very quickly, again, the rear end just absolutely glued to the floor, so there's no bother there. But as we come down onto Rocky Road, and again, it's just this. I don't know what else to say about it, really. I just don't know what to say about it. It's so good. You just see how just easy it is to get to that apex and hold it there, exactly where you need it to be, each time, every time, no drama. Just, you know, get out of it just a little bit there. As we come down to the final corner, maybe a little bit of an issue on the right front brakes there. Just having to be a little bit wary, but coming through the final tunnel and towards the line, it's going to be an absolutely staggering and hugely impressive 7 minutes, 11 seconds, 0.510. Which means not only has it beaten the Lamborghini, but it's also beaten the Honda 2 and 4 concept, which I think is absolutely brilliant. It was probably never going to beat the Lotus, but I think for a car that's nearly 40 years old now, that's an incredibly impressive time. It really is. And it just told you how good this car is. If you haven't driven it yet, I highly suggest you do. The only unfortunate thing, as we're about to see, is because it falls into the same category as the Ferrari F50 GT, it's not going to get a place on the actual leaderboard, which is really, it's disappointing, because I would have loved to have seen it on the leaderboard. If we scroll down and have a look at where it would have fared with a 711, you can see it's going to put us a firm 20th. Which, considering the cars around us, we've beaten, there's a GTR, Nismo there, there's also a Mercedes-Benz CLK LM just above us as well, that we're not too far away from. So I think that's an absolutely brilliant time, really impressive. And like I said, guys, if you haven't driven this car, go do it right now. Just right now, whatever you're doing. I don't care if you're eating your dinner, playing with yourself, or playing with someone else, go drive this car, because it is that good. But that is the end of today's episode, guys, so thank you everybody so much for watching. If you did enjoy, would like to see more Project Cars 2 and Hill Climb Monsters content, or just race content in general from myself, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Also, don't be afraid to leave a comment down below. Have you driven this car? If you have, was it as good for you as it was for me? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Also, if you have suggestions of cars you would like to see me driving this series, again, leave suggestions down below in the comments. I'm always happy to hear from you, always happy to hear your ideas. But yeah, that's the end of today's video, guys. So once again, thank you everybody so much for watching. Take care, and as always, I will catch you all in the next video. Peace!